once your company's ready to go into doing projects, large-scale projects, then who do you tap to bring in that kind of money?
Right. So it's varied over time. So sometimes I don't like to do it, but some of my companies have gotten into hedge funds.
Really?
Right? Because they're very short-term investors for the most part.
Okay.
But we'll go to mezzanine investors, might go to public equity investors if it's right before an IPO. They're looking for a lower return. They want to be able to get into the deal, buy some more on the IPO.
Got it.
We go to debt, before when there were debt markets.
Right. Yeah, I know.
Well, the DOE has been a great source for a number of our companies, either through loan guarantees or for grants.
I know you have such a extensive corporate background.
Yes.
And how has that influenced your portfolio, or how you manage those corporate relationships for your portfolio companies?
Right. So, I came out of 3M's venture capital programs. I know what corporations want to get out of it. I know how to deal with them. And so how I've managed it, we may have half a dozen corporate relationships. We try not to have more than that. And each partner might have a couple. So it's not overwhelming to me, and I develop a close relationship with my colleagues on the other side. So at Element, I've got a couple deals. David Lincoln has a couple corporations. Michael Bevan, Michael Gross.
Is there a reason why, though, you want to manage a small group of those corporate relationships?
Yes, we did not need to raise that money. We could have raised money from institutional investors, but the good corporations are a great source of knowledge, market knowledge, technical knowledge. They have a different perspective on the market than we do, and so it's always nice to, rather than talking to 5 other venture capitalists, go talk to a few corporations,
right.
And they may say, you're crazy, or
right.
This is never going to work, or this is great, right?
So,
it's different. You always want to get different perspectives when you're evaluating stuff.
Would you have any of your companies ready for an IPO in 2010 or poised for an IPO?
We'll probably have a couple.
Really?
One for sure, maybe a second one.
Whereas last year, you probably wouldn't even have considered that, right? Is it because the market's ready, or is it that...
I spent more time in this conversation talking about taking companies public this year than I did last year.
Yeah, right.
It wasn't going to happen.
Now, was it because of the IPO market, or was it the stage of development that the companies were at?
It was the IPO.
It was. So the companies are poised, they're ready for it, and the market seems more receptive.
So what I do is I try to build great companies, and I want to build them so that they can go public because they're a great company. But I know that the exit could be a public IPO, or it could be a strategic acquisition. But if you're building it to be a great company, the exit usually takes care of itself.
Right.
So for example, you're building a company, you get up to 150 million in revenues, you're going to take it public. Oftentimes, many times I've gotten strategic acquirer comes in because the S1's written and he knows if he doesn't buy it now, it's going to cost him 50% or more later.
Right. So, but now as a venture capitalist, do you have a preference one way or the other in terms of going with a strategic acquirer versus an IPO? I mean, all the trouble to go through an IPO versus the acquisition?
My answer might be different today than it was 10 years ago. Because 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you could take companies public and there's a robust market, and you had a risk that the stock price was going to crater before your lockup. But there was a realistic chance of doing that, and so I was more indifferent. The advantage on, especially if it ends up being a strategic acquisition as you're making filing the S1, is that you got an idea what the market's going to be, and you get a liquidity event. You get cash. So I think over the next 12 to 18 months, I think you'll see a number of companies go public, which is going to be good for the industry. I think you're going to continue to see private capital flow into the business. I think there'll be early stage financings, but it's going to be tougher than it was a year or two ago. I think there's a risk aversion in the whole venture capital private equity market. I think that you're going to see a lot of jobs and revenues from initial revenues from some of the companies that are getting the DOE grants and DOE loan guarantees, because they'll start to get into production. I think that China is going to become a huge force in clean tech. I mean, the amount of solar they're thinking about putting in and wind and the borrowing costs, as we heard earlier in the program, dirt cheap.
Right.
And the big advantage they have is we're putting in solar to replace dirty
Coal
carbon,
plants.
right? China's putting in solar and wind to get power.
Right.
So there's a much bigger value proposition there, right? It's an opportunity for our technologies.
Right.
I've got companies, Dia, will be selling to India, they'll be going into China. The issue you have there is that a lot of our technology is developed for Western requirements, whereas in China, for example, if you've got a technology that provides 100 joules of value and it costs $50 in the US, you can find something in China that provides 50 joules for $90. But if 50 joules is all you need, they're going to buy it. Right?
So
Good enough gets sold there, whereas here people look and say, well, I can get 50% more performance for 10% more cost, I'll take the performance.
So you don't see China as a threat in terms of competition for your companies?
I do.
You do?
Yeah. So if you look at solar, they're a very low-cost manufacturer. They'll be a threat. If you look at wind, you can produce wind blades in China. Big cost of wind blades is in transportation. We're in a company called TPI. We can ship 500 miles from Iowa, and hard to compete with us. As you get farther than that, someone can put a plant in and compete with us. The Chinese can ship to the West Coast cheaper than we can make it here.
That's scary.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, once they have to start shipping it by truck, then we got an advantage.
Right.
So that, is a disadvantage. But you look at the other way is we're technologically ahead of them in a lot of areas, and we can partner or find channels into China. So, for example, in wind blades, as far as I know, there's no Chinese company that's making wind blades for 2 gigawatt turbines.
So is there an opportunity to license out your technology?
We'd look at license or joint venture for most of the companies that I'm in. Some of them like Powergenics, Excelergy, Miartech, we're actually manufacturing in China. And then what we'll do there is we will partner with our manufacturing partner to get our distribution and sales and marketing in China.
John, I just want to thank you for being a constant force in the industry and a supporter of this event and a resource to us in general. Thanks for attending.
Yeah.